Fearful that a company of foes might have taken shelter in the little grove of cottonwoods, the Sioux determined to take every precaution against a sudden attack. While Little Raven remained in the ravine with the ponies, White Otter and Sunbird seated themselves upon the plain to listen for sounds from the grove. All was still. They began to wonder if they had been needlessly alarmed. At that moment one of the ponies whinnied softly. White Otter and Sunbird scrambled wildly into the gully. Little Raven had already seized the pony and turned its head out of the wind. The other ponies also seemed restless and nervous, and White Otter and Sunbird attempted to quiet them. "It is bad," White Otter said, softly. "I believe someone is riding this way." The thought was startling. The Sioux stood beside their ponies, listening uneasily. One question flashed through the mind of each of them. Were enemies approaching stealthily, under cover of the darkness? They heard nothing to give them a clue. Many moments passed. The silence increased their suspense. They believed they were in peril. It seemed folly to loiter in the ravine. "Come, we will go," whispered White Otter. They mounted the ponies and rode from the ravine. Once on the plain, they stopped for a moment to listen. Then the pony again attempted to call, but Little Raven silenced it with his riding quirt. The warning was significant. The Sioux believed that strange horses were close at hand. They turned their ponies and rode silently away into the night. It was some time before they ventured to speak. "Well, my brothers, I believe Ma Yashush came to find us," White Otter laughed softly, when they were beyond earshot of the ravine. "Yes, White Otter, I believe your words were true. I believe scouts were peeping over that ridge," Sunbird told him. "Do you believe they saw us?" Little Raven asked anxiously. "No," replied White Otter. "Perhaps they found out about our ponies. Although they realized that it might be perilous to linger in the vicinity, the Sioux determined to remain within sight of the grove until they learned if their suspicions were real. When they reached a low ridge, considerable distance to the eastward, they decided to stop and wait for daylight. "See, pretty soon it will be light," said Sunbird. "Then we will find out if there is anyone over there in that place." When the night shadows finally lifted from the plain, White Otter and Sunbird concealed themselves below the crest of the ridge to watch, while Little Raven waited at the base of the slope with the ponies. The grove was in plain sight, and the Sioux watched expectantly. "If there are hunters over there, pretty soon they will ride out to look for buffaloes," said Sunbird. "Perhaps they are watching," White Otter reminded him. A few moments later they saw two horsemen ride from the grove, and turn toward the ravine. They rode across the plain at an easy canter, and showed little caution. As they drew near the ravine, however, they became more careful. Once within arrow range, they stopped, and it was apparent that they were watching the top of the gully. Then they rode slowly forward. "Those are the scouts that peeped over that hill," declared White Otter. "I believe they are trying to find out about us." The horsemen had disappeared into the ravine. The Sioux had been unable to identify them. They felt certain that the strangers would soon find the pony tracks. The idea alarmed them. "Perhaps they will follow us," suggested Sunbird. "Watch," said White Otter. The horsemen had suddenly appeared. They had crossed the ravine, and were riding slowly over the plain. The Sioux knew at once that they were looking for pony tracks. It was not long before they found them. They followed the trail a bowshot or more, and then they stopped. They were looking directly toward the ridge. The Sioux watched them in breathless suspense. They were straining their eyes to identify them, but the distance made it impossible. "I cannot tell who they are," declared White Otter. "Can you tell about it?" "No. They are too far away," Sunbird told him. "Perhaps they will come closer. I believe they are talking about it," said White Otter. At that moment the horsemen turned their ponies, and galloped off toward the west. They crossed the ravine, and rode toward the grove. They passed it, however, and continued toward the ridge farther to the westward. It was not long before they disappeared. "It is bad," declared White Otter. "Now we do not know who they are." "Well, we know that our enemies are in this place," Sunbird told him. "Now it will be useless to look for the buffaloes. If Tatanka comes, those scouts will tell their people about it." "Yes, I believe they are looking for buffaloes." "My brother, I feel different about it," said White Otter. "Perhaps those scouts are with a war party. Perhaps they are Pawnees. Perhaps they are going to fight my people. I must find out about it." Sunbird remained silent. It was not the part of a warrior to ask questions. He waited for White Otter to explain his plans. "Now I will tell you what I propose to do," White Otter told him. "We must stay here and watch. Perhaps those scouts are trying to fool us. Perhaps they are trying to make us believe they have gone away. I believe they are peeping over that hill." "Well, they will not catch us," laughed Sunbird. While White Otter continued to watch, Sunbird crept down the slope to tell Little Raven about the two mysterious horsemen. The ridge to the westward was far away, and White Otter knew that it would be impossible to discover anyone who might be hiding there. He had little doubt that at least one of the unknown riders had stopped to watch the plain. "Did you see anything?" Sunbird inquired anxiously, when he returned. "No, I did not see anything, but I believe someone is watching over there on that hill," White Otter told him. "Then we must be cautious," said Sunbird. They watched until the day was half gone, and then, having seen nothing to indicate that foes were loitering in the vicinity, they began to feel somewhat reassured. They wondered if the two horsemen might not have been stray hunters who had been led to the grove by the antelopes. Having found the fresh pony tracks, they might have feared to loiter in the locality. In spite of the possibility, however, the Sioux resolved to take no chances. "We will keep watching," declared White Otter. Soon afterward their patience was rewarded when they saw what appeared to be a cloud of dust or smoke rising behind the distant ridge. They watched it with great interest. For some time it puzzled them. It was faint and indistinct, and they wondered if it was dust raised by the hoofs of buffaloes or ponies. Then they noted that it seemed to rise intermittently in puffs, and continued in one particular spot. "So tar, smoke," White Otter said, finally. "Yes, yes, it is smoke," agreed Sunbird. "Those scouts are calling their people," declared White Otter. "I believe it is a war party. We will see," said Sunbird. In a short time the smoke faded from the sky. The Sioux felt sure that the signal had been seen by those for whom it was intended. They had little doubt that a company of horsemen were riding across the plain on the other side of the ridge. "It is bad," said White Otter. "Those scouts found pony tracks at the place where the trees grow. They followed them to that gully. They found them coming this way. Then they were afraid, and went to call their people. I believe they will try to find out about us." "Well, my brother, they are a long ways off," Sunbird reminded him. We can keep away from them. We must stay here and watch, declared White Otter. Perhaps it is a big war party of Pawnees. Perhaps they are going to fight my people. I believe something bad will come of it. We will keep watching until we find out about it, Sunbird assured him. As time passed and they saw nothing more, White Otter became uneasy. A disquieting possibility had suddenly presented itself to his mind. It filled him with distrust, and awakened fears for the safety of his people. I do not like this thing, he told Sunbird. That ridge goes a long ways. We cannot see over it. Perhaps a war party is riding along behind that hill. Perhaps they are going to the lodges of my people. I would like to look over that hill, and find out about it. You must not try to do that, Sunbird cautioned him. It would be foolish. I believe scouts are watching over there. If we show ourselves, they will come after us. White Otter remained silent. He was worried and perplexed. He believed that what Sunbird had said was true. Still he knew that if a war party of foes was moving against the Ogallala camp, it was his duty to learn of it, and carry a warning to his people. For the moment, however, he saw no way of accomplishing it. The ridge from which he was watching was parallel with the ridge to the westward, and there was a wide expanse of open plain between them. To reach the other ridge it would be necessary to ride out in full sight of any foes who might be watching from concealment. White Otter realized that such a maneuver would be foolhardy. He decided that it would be impossible to do anything before nightfall. Yes, my brother, I see that what you say is true, he said, finally. The lodges of my people are 3 suns' travel away. It is a long ways. A war party travels slow so that the ponies will be fresh when the fight begins. There is only one thing to do. We must keep watching until it gets dark. Then we will ride over that hill, and try to find out about those people. I believe it is the best thing to do, said Sunbird. Late in the day, however, they saw something which convinced them that the 2 horsemen had been part of a clever stratagem to deceive anyone who had been watching. An eagle suddenly appeared high over the plain, and flew toward the grove of cottonwoods. It was evident that the bird intended to alight in the timber. The Sioux watched closely. Once above the grove, the eagle set its wings and dropped toward the trees. Then, as it got nearer, it rose and circled far out over the plain. The Sioux were quick to understand the significance of the maneuver. Hi! Hoo-yah saw something down there among the trees, White Otter cried, excitedly. Yes, I believe there is something over there in that place, said Sunbird. I believe scouts are hiding there, declared White Otter. Hoo-yah has told us about them. It is good. They watched the grove with new interest. They knew that Hoo-yah, the great warbird, was not likely to be frightened by Ma-ya-shush, the prairie wolf, nor Ta-ta-ka-dan, the antelope, nor even by Great Ma-ta-hota, the bear. They felt quite certain, therefore, that Hoo-yah had discovered other enemies in the grove. Perhaps a war party is hiding over there, said Sunbird. Perhaps they found out about the ponies. Perhaps they sent those scouts to fool us. I do not believe a war party is hiding in that place, White Otter told him. A war party would go away while it was dark. Yes, I believe that is true, agreed Sunbird. The Sioux were perplexed. Although the actions of Hoo-yah, the warbird, led them to believe that the grove concealed some of their foes, They were unable to guess why the latter had loitered in the timber. While they were trying to solve the mystery, they saw another smoke signal rising behind the ridge. It appeared in the place where they had discovered the other signal. The smoke column was light and indistinct, and soon broke into intermittent puffs. In a few moments it ceased. "Now I know that someone is hiding over there where the trees grow," declared White Otter. "I believe they are scouts. I believe they found out about the ponies. It made them cautious. I believe those riders went to bring the war party. I believe they will come to that place. When it gets dark, we must watch out. I believe they are pawnees," said Sunbird. "I do not know who they are, but I am going to find out about it," White Otter told him.